I think as a DAO space, as DAO operators, the design challenge is on us to bring really hyper clarity and transparency to everything that we're doing, how things work, who is empowered to make what decisions.
Hi, NEWFORUM community. Welcome to yet another episode of NEWFORUM. NEWFORUM is powered by Newcorn Foundation, focused on fostering the expansion of decentralized social applications, also known as Social 3.0, by forming an ecosystem and a community of visionaries, creators, and investors. It provides a safe space for thinkers to communicate, inform, and share ideas in order to ensure the conscious and ethical growth of a new web, embedding the values of care, freedom, and creativity.
And as usual, we always bring you very exciting guests. And today we have with us Steph Alinsug, aka Crypto Honey on Twitter. Steph is a storyteller, designer, and coordination obsessed. Fully in orbit in Web3, she is storytelling at C Club, building 2+ DAO, and thinking about the edges of coordination and governance at Orca. We can't wait to talk with her about DAOs and Web3. Hi, Steph. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm so well. Thanks for having me.
So, Steph, I saw that your Twitter, you say you came for the Web3 and you stayed for the DAOs. Maybe could you describe your journey into the space?
Definitely. Yeah, so that little intro feels really true. My partner had been sort of slow dripping Web3 content to me for over a year. And I finally was like, what is this actual thing? Like, it sounds like I just had visions of dark web and things that just like are very fantastical. So I actually listened to an episode of A16Z, their NFT episode. And I listened to that episode twice over the course of like 48 hours. And I listened to it the first time and I was like, okay, this is actually a very interesting sort of corner of the world. This technology piece and what it's enabling seems really interesting. The second time I listened to it, we have this big whiteboard in our kitchen, and I was carrying my baby. It was like really early in the morning, and I just started like drawing these maps, like trying to connect like blockchain protocols with the implications of various types of tokens and like where DeFi sits, and was just trying to map out the space. And in doing that, I sort of stumbled into this idea of DAOs that were at the time just like still emerging into the wider public consciousness. And I immediately had legibility on them because I realized that in my previous life, in my pre-Web3 life, I had attempted to start a DAO without knowing it was a DAO, and of course without having the technology to enable the collective ownership over this thing that I was trying to instigate. So I just was blown away that now this technology can enable this type of coordination that just didn't feel possible before, and really it incentivizes a type of really innovative ownership and coordination that, again, just wasn't possible. So I just felt really excited by that opportunity.
Wow, what a story, you know. It's like always in these moments when you connect the dots kind of, and I feel like Web3 is really, when I heard the first time about it and I saw everything, I was like, this is really connecting the dots, and it's really what kind of is missing. Also for me, coming from, you know, I always loved curation and connecting communities, so it just makes sense kind of like that we are having these DAO models right now. So really interesting how you found your way into the space.
Yeah, I think that piece around connecting the dots just feels like a constant through line for me in my experience of the space, where there's a version of our understanding of the space that is very much just grounded in Web3 and grounded in the technology. And there's a way that you can kind of forget and close out everything that's happened in your life and in your world up until then. And when I get most excited is when I find through lines and like connect the dots back to my pre-Web3 life, my like IRL life, whether that's something that's happening like in real time, just like human to human coordination, or a piece of content or a book that I'm reading, or I'm listening to a specific philosopher or thinker, and also just reflecting on my life up until now. I'm just like, oh yeah, these things that I was doing back then are now enabled by this technology, and we're just able to experiment with how we're in relationship with one another in a way that wasn't really possible previously.
Well said. I'm so curious to know, what's your background? Like, what were you into before falling down the rabbit hole? Because I really love how you articulate this space, and I feel like you might have a really specific background to be able to think the way you do. So yeah, it'd be great to hear it.
So I feel like I have two stories to tell about my background. One is my like professional story, which is, went to college, like thought I was going to be the next great food writer. And then the magazine that I wanted to write for, Sever magazine, closed. It folded while I was in college. So that was like 2008 or something. But I still felt really committed to this idea of being a creative, of producing something of value and of meaning in the world. And also my interest in food, that led me to a focus on sustainable farming, which then led me to being a goat farmer for like 4 years. I was actively managing significantly sized dairy herds throughout the US. And in doing that, managing a dairy herd is essentially managing a business. And in some ways it's like managing a DAO, because you have like 100 contributors who show up for work and need guardrails, and they all have their own needs and desires and wants. I'm talking about the herd itself. But through that, I discovered my love of design and of storytelling. So I took over the marketing and the brand design of the dairies that I was working for. And I know that sounds like kind of a not sexy thing, but it actually like was really, really fun, because there's just, farming just puts you in touch with this side of yourself and with this side of the world that you just really can't access otherwise. You're really at the whims of the earth and of these animals, and it just puts you into a state of flow that is like unmatched. So I am self-taught in all of the design tools and concepts and theories that I use on a regular basis. And so when I left farming, I went on to branding and design, mostly for food-based businesses, nonprofits, think tanks, grassroots orgs, and on top of that was also being as a community organizer, mostly around food justice and racial justice and social justice. And so that component of my work feels really aligned with what's happening in the DAO space now. Just like, how do people come together around a shared purpose to affect change, basically. We ran a lot of experiments and we failed a lot of experiments in that space. And I learned so much about what it means to be in relationship with other people, what it means to be accountable to other people, and what it means to be accountable to yourself. So there's that story. And then there's also this other story of like me being a person in the world, and like my lived experience of having lived through some pretty significant like violence, and like both like witnessing and then also like being perpetrated on. That has really informed how I am in relationship to the world and with people around me, because I just always want to create the conditions for people to be their best selves and to be in best relationship with themselves and with each other. And also being a parent has really taught me the importance of that. So this is all to say, I feel like all of those things are just so present in the DAO space, just how we are in relationship to one another and how we coordinate around shared purpose and affect change.
It's really nice to hear your background, because it's really important that, when people are listening to these podcasts, they hear that people in this space are real people, and they have real experiences and they're bringing it to the space. But, sometimes, especially when you go on Twitter, it kind of can feel a little bit intimidating. And so it's really nice that you shared that part. about your story and about your life. And so, we use the word DAO a lot, and in our community, we have a lot of newbies, I'd say. So what would you say, like, what is a DAO, and what are some of the things you have to consider when building one?
That is such a good question. And I feel like the way that I answer that question evolves every single day. My current answer to that is a DAO is it's a container that enables novel modes of human coordination and governance around a shared purpose that is enabled by blockchain technology. So what does that actually mean in practice? That means there are specific tools that are used in the space to enable a DAO. And then there are also just like theoretical and like concepts that enable a DAO. Some of the tools look like things like Discord, often a DAO's community exists. A DAO's like written and visual community exists within a Discord. That's how people actually like communicate primarily. There's other tools like Coordinate and Snapshot, which enable governance and like on-chain, like peer-to-peer value recognition. And then the piece that actually interests me the most about DAOs though, and what feels most just like how we define the DAO is that the more like intangible and conceptual components of a DAO, which are like, how do we define this container? How do we define what we have meaning around? And then how do we manage decisions that need to be made? And what are the processes we engage in? How do we define leadership? What is leadership? Who is a leader? What are the roles? What am I supposed to do here? What can I do here? Who can I be here? So all of these more like human questions are the pieces that feel just really exciting for me. And I think at the same time, those are the pieces that can feel really disorienting to someone who's new to the space, because we're all figuring this out as we go. Like every DAO that I've been that I've been a part of, that I am a part of, and the DAOs that I'm in, that I'm actively participating in building or operating, we are actively trying to figure out those questions as we go. And so people are coming into a space that is like just moving fast speed at the same time that people who are operating it and who are there are trying to do it with intention. And I think oftentimes those things cause tension. But it's a really worthwhile pursuit.
Beautifully said. What are some of the defining characteristics Web3 communities have? And I think I was going through your Twitter, and you wrote a piece about Web3's language problem. And I found that really interesting. And there's a part where you bolded that says, which is why Web3 needs to reimagine its language. Yeah, it would be great to hear a bit about that, because I find that really interesting, because you touched on some really good points. So if you could expound on that a bit, it would be great.
When I was first entering the space, which to be honest is not very long ago, I mean, I onboarded myself in November, and I'm a mixed race person. I'm second gen. I live here in the United States, and my mother is Filipino. She comes from the Philippines. She was the first in her family to come over in her 20s. My father is English, and he was the only one to come over from his family. And I've spent my whole life trying to just make sense of what it means to be a mixed race person, what it means to be not white in a lot of spaces, what it means to also pass or like be perceived as white in a lot of spaces. And in particular, what the impacts of colonization have had on my lived experience now, and then also my intergenerational experience from my mother, and the fact that I have both of these lineages living within me, both this English lineage and this Filipino lineage. I've just been grappling with this my whole life. And when I entered the space, I was a little bit unmoored by the language around pioneering, exploring new frontiers, like heading west. And, it just felt really trite and really stale. I'm like, we are so early in this space, and we are all coming here with a desire to build and create something different. Like many of us are coming from with the traumas of Web 2, and we want to create a space that is like truly regenerative and where as many people as possible can find belonging and connection and meaning. And we're also hella smart. We're like hella motivated. I think we can take up the task to drop these like very trite words and find new, more precise ones. And to me, it's an exciting challenge. And it's also a challenge. You know, I for sure, I'm not interested in any sort of like language police type thing. Like I for sure will drop into familiar colonized language all the time. And it's just a matter of like, oh, okay, totally noticed I just did that. What else could I have said to be more precise and also just to be a little bit more innovative with how we talk about the space?
I just think about the typical Twitter good morning, you know, and it's like, first I was like, why is everyone, then I first joined, you know, I came around the same time as you came into the space, you know, and I was like, what is going on? Everybody's talking in this hyper speed, and you know, but I love what you said, like people have really, they want to do something, you know, they want to do something, they want to be part of something and want to do something better for humans. And really, that's the focus. And I feel like you have this really grounding energy about you, you know, you with your background and everything. And I feel like you coming from, like you said, gold farming is so special now that you come into DAOs. Like that is like the coolest story I can imagine, you know. So I think that's really awesome. And so what do you think could be like the onboarding process for getting people into these DAOs? I feel like right now it's really volatile, the whole concept of DAOs and how it can actually look like. Like you talked a bit about leadership, and what do you think could be like the onboarding process with getting everyone on board in a DAO?
That really feels like the $1 million question to me right now, especially as I'm the only person in my geographic friend group that has onboarded into Web3 other than my partner. And I think about that all the time. Just how do I create a sense of legibility and resonance for the people that I'm already in relationship with? Because I've built all of these beautiful new relationships in the space. And I just feel so excited to like bring along all my people. I'm just like, you have no idea. It's like, it's just full of creativity and like problem solving and real purpose. And so I think this question of like, how do we bring people into this space in a way that's like meaningful and responsible just feels so alive for me. So a few things that feel important is, I think it feels really useful to have a sort of like a steward or a friend to, you know, be there for you. To, I don't even know if taking you under the wing is the right analogy, but I have found so much meaning in the people that I've met who have just been willing to just like jam, you know, just like meet one-to-one and just like talk about what we're thinking about, what we're learning. And that alone has just been so impactful. And to be able to hop into a Telegram chat or to hop into Discord or to hop into my Twitter DMs and be like, I have this question, I'm thinking about this thing. And this person's like, oh my gosh, totally thinking about that too. Or this is what I've discovered about that. So I think that piece feels really important, just to have a trusted person that you can always fall back on and ask all the weird questions that'll come up. I think as a DAO space, as DAO operators, the design challenge is on us to bring really hyper clarity and transparency to everything that we're doing, how things work, who is empowered to make what decisions. That's the piece that feels like, I feel like by the end of this year, we're going to see so many more templates for that kind of clarity within a DAO. But that feels like the current big design challenge that I think will enable more people to onboard meaningfully and also, yeah, meaningfully and responsibly.
Right. And I just can remember our CEO said something like, we don't want to bring the same Web 2 problems into the Web 3 DAOs, you know, so it's really a big challenge because there's leadership, there's transparency, you have contracts, you have, all these different, let's say, signals going on within the DAO, and to coordinate that is a big challenge. But I think somebody said it's like gonna be the year of the DAO, or the next years are gonna be years of the DAO. And I think it's like even the last couple of days we had more and more conversations around DAOs, and I think it's really with what is going on in the world, and people just really feel the need that like to have this sort of other organization or way to come together, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things that came up for me there too, like so you said this word contracts, and that totally is a little bit of a tension in the DAOs that I'm in right now. So many of these DAOs are not legal entities, they're not tied to any legal entity. So there can't be a contract or an MOU or anything like that because there's no legal entity to tie them to. At the same time, agreements are so important. I think just within our world at large, like I'm divorced, and I just like take agreements and commitment really seriously. And I think that as a space, we have a huge opportunity to create templates for how we agree to things with that in lieu of a legal entity. And there's a whole nother version of this conversation that could go into the usefulness of the legal system, of, there might even be like a tangent around abolition or something. But if we're just talking about the space as it is today, there really is an opportunity to create templates for how we are in agreement with each other and how we manage those agreements outside of a traditional legal system. Because that's how you create trust, is you have clear expectations of what is this relationship, what are each of our roles in this relationship, and what is the process for when we feel like one of us or some of us have fallen back on expectations or have not met deliverables or have actually, basically what happens when we're in conflict with one another, which is going to happen. We are going to be in conflict. We're human beings in relationship. We're going to have conflict. And there's a version of this world where conflict can and should be generative, where we can utilize conflict as a way to surface learnings and misalignment and maybe miscommunications about things and iterate them into more generative frameworks moving forward.
Yeah, very, very well said. I think that's so important, because like you said, contracts and things that we can trust people, and just having a clear vision of like, you have to have some sort of central mission, central rules to really live out this decentralized way, because otherwise there's going to just be chaos. And I think that's where really good leadership and good communication is really, really important. And also, so that we can rely on each other in these DAOs. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, even just to break it down to like an atomic level, just like using as myself as a use case, there was a version of my life where I was married, where there was a legal agreement in place, and the relationship did not go well, right? And so no happy marriages end in divorce. So, and now I'm partnered. I have a family, a mixed family, and we are not married. We're very purposely not married, and yet we have way stronger, clearer agreements than I had when I actually had a legal framework in place. And I think that just like, to break it down again to the atomic level, that like you can have, in order for, even within a decentralized space, so let's say within the atomic unit of a relationship where you're not married, like in some ways that is a little bit of a decentralized, like you each are a little bit like operating as separate nodes, and that you have to have even stronger agreements in place, even stronger processes in place, because at the end of the day, all you have is this atomic unit of the two of you. And so I think about that at a larger, at a fractal scale. It's just like, how do we define those agreements and those processes in lieu of some sort of like meta sort of governance structure?
I think those are really important points that you're bringing up, and you're just discussing and really dissecting it very, very well, because most of the time when we talk about DAOs, we just paint this perfect picture, and I think that it can get there, but we need to really work it out. Like you said, like, how do you even define leadership? Because most of the time as human beings, we always need somebody to say the yes, somebody to be in charge of saying yes, because if everybody has to say yes to everything, then nothing will get done, right? And so I think, yeah, there's a lot of navigating to do, but I do like the sort of like the feedback thing about DAO, that you have this community of people, and if you have like a shared or a common goal, then you can like bounce back, feedback off of each other and just sort of grow together. And I think I really like that. And I like how the example you gave with your own personal life and experience, I think it really made it clearer. And I think the beginners listening to this will really will really appreciate that, because it was perfectly said. But then what do you think, like, with the DAOs? Like, how do you think, because it's definitely a great example, like it is somewhat a functional example of coordination in Web3, right? But then, like, how do you see the structure of engagement like evolve in the next 5 years? I think we sort of touched a bit on it, but like, if you have to picture, like, from where we're at now, in 5 years, 6 years time, where do you think it can be?
Gosh, what a question. I mean, 5 years, 6 years time. I'm like, what is even, that's like 20 years in crypto time. But yeah, I imagine two different versions of the future. I feel like my experience of the space right now, which also to name is like a very specific corner of the space. I'm meaningfully involved in 3 or 4 DAOs, and there are how many DAOs out there, right? And I also take a particular focus on DAOs that emphasize this like social relational component too. And there's like DAOs that are focused on just like DeFi. There's like protocol DAOs. Like there's all kinds of DAOs. So yeah, just to name that, like everything that I'm bringing comes from this like very specific corner of the space. What I'm watching us do in DAOs right now is we are just figuring out these templates. We're figuring out the actual tools. We're figuring out basic like coordination and governance processes. And I feel really clear that by the end of the year, we're going to have moved so much, and that's just going to unlock a whole opportunity for I don't even know what, like when the internet was, when the first website went up, no one had any idea that Twitter could have come, or that Facebook could have come, or TikTok. Who could have predicted TikTok like 20 years ago, even that like Gen Z would just be making like 10-second video memes and like it would change the world, right? So my sense is that in 5 to 6 years from now, I feel like we're gonna see it. We're gonna unlock different levels. If we like think about a game, we're just gonna unlock different levels, and it's just a whole new world is gonna reveal. And then we're gonna stumble through that one, and we're gonna like unlock that level, and then like a whole nother world is gonna reveal. I feel like we're gonna see two sort of tracks of coordination. I feel like we're gonna watch some spaces get more intimate and more precise. There's just going to be more room for us to find homes for our like multitudes of selves that are within us, like in some spaces I exist as like Steph, the writer. In other spaces I exist as like Steph, the like second gen person. In this space I exist as like Steph, who's like really into makeup. Like there's going to be space to show up in all these different ways. So yeah, I think we're gonna get precise and more intimate, and at the same time, I think we're gonna be able to also have these spaces, whether that's in a DAO or another formation that's going to emerge, that is just going to be a much wider net, and we're going to be able to try out coordination with just people that we might not have ever considered ourselves in relationship with them before. And honestly, that's the piece that I'm most excited about. That we're gonna be able to just try even experiments on even bigger scales, because of all of the messiness and the stumbling that we've done in these very early years.
I just wanted to touch on the thing what you said with multiple identities or personalities. I feel like that's So I can relate to that so well, because I have so many different interests. And before it was always like, you have to pick one, or you have to, you're just good at one, like choose one, and I'm like, no, but I like music, but I also like fashion. Like, why do I have to, and then I also like business. Or so now it's like, actually, okay, I can use all of these things in DAOs and just be part of different communities. And if tomorrow I want to be a whole different person and, be into anime, I can check it out. Or, I really love that idea. Yeah, just wanted to quickly say.
I mean, I'm a Gemini. I'm a really hardcore Gemini. Like all the memes just are so relatable to me, and I'm like, wow, I am a trope. but like in truth, that is also part of the space that just really excites me, is this ability to just be able to show up and be seen as my whole self, or as the self that I want to be seen as. There's a whole version of this conversation that talks about pseudonymous profiles and anons, but I think at more of a just like fundamental level, like my experience of being in the community organizing space, of being in movement space, I always felt like I had to show up as like one type of person, that I couldn't be into things like lipstick. I couldn't be into things like natural wine, and because there wasn't room for that in that space. And same thing when I would go to when I want to be in a space where I wanted to go to a really nice restaurant, I couldn't show up as the BIPOC person that I am, I had to code switch. And so that's also part of the beauty of the space. It's like you can show up as your whole self and or as these pieces of yourself, and find solidarity and camaraderie within that.
I think it's really beautiful that we have that. I also do think about with everything, we need to sort of have a balance, and set sort of some boundaries, because we have people who are extremists, and this could be taken to the next level. And so I think yes, it is doing something great, but then I think that these conversations matter, because like you said, wherever there are humans, chaos is right around the corner. And so it's great that we're having these conversations, and it gets me thinking about the metaverse, because it's I guess the perfect space from what it's being I guess described to be. It's going to be that perfect place to also kind of exist with different identities and express ourselves differently. So that's really great. But as long as we find a balance, and we don't get lost, that's usually my concern. But I think that having such conversations with people like you, you're being so transparent, so real, and I really appreciate that.
Totally.
Yeah. What do you think are the real life problems that these governance models can solve in Web3?
Yeah. I mean, also another $1 million question. Of course there's a version of me that could answer just tangibly, there's DAOs that are working on reparations. There's DAOs that are working on land back. There's DAOs that are working on purchasing or all the DAOs that spun up to support Ukraine. I feel like those are definitely important questions. I also feel like I've spent so much of my adult life thinking about how just trying to come up with not even blanket solutions, just trying to come up with any solutions to really significant social problems like housing and police brutality and just basic government's electoral representation. And I feel like I just have so many more questions than I have answers, and I have tons of theoretical ideas and applications. And the thing that I just keep returning to is I feel like we have to just start small. We have to first understand how we're in relationship to one another, and at the atomic level, and then at the sprung out at the DAO level. Because even if we come up with the great idea that this is the framework that's going to like a community land trust, for instance, is a good example. My partner was deeply involved in some organizing where we lived locally within our geographic region to spin up a community land trust. And it was an incredible group of people that came together, fully intersectional, primarily Black femme led. And when you can't even coordinate within the team, within the one-to-one, it's impossible to create something that's really generative and that's really going to solve the problem. So, and I say this as someone who has like been in not right relationship with people my whole life, like we've all done that, right? So that's the piece that I feel really interested in, is just how do we first figure out how we're in relationship with one another, and how do we make decisions together, and then from there, what are the things that we can coordinate around to have practical real world change on. I know that that's a little bit of a like, I'm gonna reject the premise of the question.
No, I love that. It's really let me think about, how countries are like, there has to be like a strong kind of foundation of things, so they can expand. It's really that concept kind of that you have to first internally be good within yourself, be good within the team, then you can go broader, because otherwise it's gonna probably get messy. And it's really a good thing to keep in mind when building all these things, that you always check in with your immediate team and everyone who is building these things.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Would you say like there's a part of like compromise? Like, because as we were talking about all of this, I thought the word compromise just kept popping in my mind. And do you think that we have to get to that point where we need to compromise a bit? I don't know.
That's a really compelling word. I'm trying to think about just the word compromise itself. And I wonder, it then makes me wonder, like, is every relationship a compromise? And I think the piece that I'm feeling like resistance to is, I think my experience of the word compromise is that it's like a pejorative. It's like not a good word, but I wonder if we just look at what it means itself and remove any sort of qualifier, and that like actually a compromise could be the right thing, right? That like you basically, it's one version of a decision-making process. It's like, we're going to come to a compromise. We're going to identify the things that we feel really strongly about, and like, and we're going to agree to meet each other on these things, and we're going to set these other things aside for now, maybe forever. So yeah, I feel really curious about that word too.
Right. Because I feel like when I think about human interaction, I think empathy is very important. And when you can empathize with a person or somebody you're dealing with, then in a sense, it's easier to make the compromise, I think, because you can feel for the other person, and it makes sense to make that compromise, as in us viewing that word in that like positive light as you described it. Yeah, I'm always curious about that. So 2+, right? I saw on your Twitter, and I read a bit about it, and it says, we empower digital communities to thrive and create positive impact by putting mental fitness at the core of collaboration. And I guess as we're talking about human interaction, collaboration, coordination, I couldn't help but like ask, what is the vision? Like, what drove you to found that?
The primary instigator is this incredible human, Luis. Louis, I just want to give him a shout out. So Louis kind of actually picked me out of the crowd too, and we were jamming a little bit about this idea that he was having, and around this DAO that he was working on instigating, and we both found resonance in prioritizing and centering this piece of human relationship, piece of human intimacy and human coordination within the digital world. So there's that component, and then there's also this idea of mental fitness, which the people who are coming to the space right now, people who are here early, or who are here in general, the space, we all know the space moves at lightning speed, just like the fastest, like innovation is happening, things are changing so fast. And, I had this experience, I tweeted about it at one point, where I arrived to Friday, the end of the week, and my brain was like literally exhausted, like was just like so tired of just the amount of thinking and like discovery that was happening, and investigation, and this idea of mental fitness is, if you think about someone like a Tim Ferriss or something, who is focused on physical wellness and like peak human performance, mental fitness is a little bit of the sort of like digital intellectual version of that. Just like what are the rituals and practices we can utilize to create care for our mind, our cognitive and our emotional selves as we're engaging with a space that requires us to show up with full integrity and full awareness and awakefulness in order to be sustainable for ourselves and also as a space. So that's sort of the core thesis of 2+. And 2+ is also a space for people who are maybe a little bit later in their Web3 journey. So if you're a DAO operator, a DAO founder, or if you're like a power user, power contributor, someone who meaningfully contributes to a handful of DAOs, this is a space to really level up how you engage with that integrity in the space. And we're really focused on this idea of contributor experience as well. How do we make this space, it actually speaks to a lot of the questions you've been asking, just like how do we onboard people meaningfully and responsibly? And so 2+ is a place where we want to, in some ways, train DAO operators and other DAO founders on the practices and the rituals that will create the conditions for contributors to come in and have really positive experiences and to thrive for the long term.
That's beautiful. I mean, Web3 is such a global space, you know, and we're like working in different zones. And like you said, you have to come with your show up with your best, right? And even with Joy and I, like recording the podcast, sometimes we have guests like in like a way different time zone, and we show up and no, obviously when our community is watching it, or audience or listeners, you cannot tell, right? But then, you know, it takes a lot.
I'm feeling like I joined Web3 and I am so passionate that I could be there like 24/7, just, you know,
right?
just like Googling things, Twittering things, like, and then I find myself just really exhausted, like you said, at the end of the week, like I have one foot in each phone call and I'm like, you know, really, and then, but I get this push from the team to really stay motivated, but it's affecting your mental health and it's affecting sometimes how you feel, and finding this balance between, okay, this is myself, this is what I produce, and this is my community, this is what I do for them. It's so challenging. Before it was just like, okay, you go to your job and, you know, you click in, click out, you see your coworkers and stuff, but now it's actually like there's possibilities that I can build, there's things I can contribute. I could work 24/7 basically now, you know. So I think we really need that. So I think it's really good. And also, like you said, there needs to be tools for DAOs to make these tools, like templates and things, because if I would start a DAO now, I'll be honest, I don't know where to start. I don't know who to get on board. So yeah, I think that's really great idea.
I think you can start with that common mission, and you know, that's kind of how I think of it. Like we always talk about immigration and stuff, and like I'm currently in a foreign country, and you go on these websites and you have like this expat group for this, expat group for that, and that's like a community in itself, because we have like a common goal, and we have common, I guess, problems or issues and whatnot, and we all feel comfortable to share whatever there, and then, you know, interact and whatnot. So whenever I think of a DAO, like I'm like, if I have to start, I have to start from that. It's kind of like the point of the starting point for me, and like in my mind.
Yeah, totally. Start from the purpose and the community.
So another thing, you know, in this communities that we just talked about, there are probably a lot of creators, entrepreneurs, and people that we care about, you know, at NewCoin. And I'm wondering, what do you think can these things like NFTs, DeFi, maybe social tokens, staking pools, what can they provide for these DAO members or creators that are joining?
Totally. So, I mean, I'll start with the social token component, because I mean, NFTs are social tokens as well. The social token piece is the piece that I feel the most interested in as well. You know, the social tokens are a way to, I want to stop using this word reward, but I haven't found a better word yet. And same thing with this word incentivize, but they're a really novel way to reward and incentivize participation, contribution, and of course, ownership. You know, the only thing I've ever owned outright is I'm trying to think, my house has a mortgage on it. My car has a loan on it. So, I in some ways I'm like in a DAO with my bank, but like with very little voting power. But yeah, this idea that you can come together around a shared purpose, and there is this on-chain ERC20 token that represents your piece of stake and ownership in this thing that you are building in relationship with other people. It creates the opportunity for you to show up in a way that I haven't experienced in any other format. And I've worked for mid-sized corporations. I've worked for nonprofits. I've done work for think tanks. And so I feel like I've participated in different types of organizational structures, both like traditional hierarchies, more flat structures, co-ops, and the social tokens enable just like a whole new level of sense of meaning and connection to this thing that you're working on. In addition to it already being a shared purpose, the social tokens just enable a whole new level of participation. And of course, the social tokens are also a way to they're also like a part of a comp package, for instance. Like you can be on a vesting schedule and have your equity sort of like unlocked as you go. And the beautiful thing about tokens is that they're liquid as soon as they're vested. You don't have to wait for a sale or a merger and acquisition, or a public offering. They're ready for you right there. So you're able to build wealth, right, built in from the time that you are granted your first tokens, or once they start vesting. And then NFTs as well. I mean, there's all kinds of models around transferable NFTs, non-transferable NFTs as access to certain things. At 2Plus, we're utilizing NFTs to facilitate our seed funding round. And the NFTs are also going to grant people early access to apply for our course, a 6-week sort of like training course for advanced DAO operators and contributors. And so there's this NFT as access. And normally you might just maybe to register for a course, you might just pay a registration fee, but now you have this. Not only do you have this beautiful piece of art, we're working with this incredible artist from Medellin, and you also have this sense of ownership and governance power with the DAO too. So yeah, I don't know if I fully answered the question, but there's so many, and those are just the use cases that we currently have, and we're going to continue to evolve them. And maybe there'll be new types of tokens that'll be emerged from this as well.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, because you gave a good use case of how it can actually look like, because I feel like when you don't know what is going to happen with these social tokens, you can't really, people who are not deep into the space, they probably think how is this going to work? How is it actually going to look like? But I think the way you explain it with the NFT and that's a really, really nice concept. And I'm excited to see more of what is possible. For the other day, a friend of mine said there was a big YouTuber and how he has this amazing community, of people who are into fashion, but they're just really specific, and he could really have this social token because he built this kind of community around this niche, and yeah, I think there's going to be so much more for creators to earn and to stake and to have in value, and also long-term assets, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that it really allows you to also move around communities, right? This is the whole idea of decentralization, and also these I guess internet personalities or content creators, you get to monetize without having to deal with a third person. So I think this is all exciting, and I keep hearing social tokens are the next big thing, and then DAOs are the next big thing, and NFTs were the next big thing. So we will see which one it is, but definitely social tokens make sense. Speaking about the creator economy, how can DAOs empower creators? Like, we know that like social tokens and NFTs and all these things do that. But I'm curious to know how you think DAOs can also impact that space.
Yeah, I think there are two ways, or at least I've seen two ways that DAOs can impact creators. So there's one version of a creator DAO that's where you could have like a PFP project, for instance. Crypto Coven's a really great example, and you have this, you know, whether it's like one of 10,000 PFP that's purchased for X amount, and then, you know, of course, written into the smart contract is a percentage of sales that's always going to go back to the creator every time that it changes hands. And then you have a community that builds around. So your Crypto Coven then serves as a key to, or a point of access to in-person events, or of course to the Discord or to other community things. You then have this beautiful community that is built both around the creator, but then also like in support of the creator, but then also just like person to person. Like I think about how much I love a certain musical artist or a certain other artist, and when I find out that someone else also loves them, just like the immediate sense of like kinship that you have with that person, and to think that that could be captured on chain and also assigned like financial value that then feeds back to the creator, but then also provides me with some financial value. That's just like the connection is already there. Like how can we basically create other modes of like wealth building within that. And then there's also DAOs that are emerging, one of which I'm like a peripherally on the peripherally supporting, called M Club, which is a sub DAO of Seed Club. That DAO exists to specifically support creators who are either transitioning to Web3 from Web2, or they're trying to run a crowd fund, or they're just trying to build their community. And so there are DAOs that are spun up specifically just to support creators, and they do that by providing like thought partnership. They do that by providing social capital, by utilizing existing platforms to then uplift creators. And they also provide just like seed grants. So like whether that's in the form of ETH or in the form of the actual social token of the DAO. So I think there's just like so many ways that the space can support and uplift creators that I know that I'm missing so many of them.
I love the thing that you said about if you like a certain musician and then somebody else likes this, there's this ultimate connection because you know that musician, and that makes really sense that the creator or the musician or the artist should benefit from it. And also now you can be in this mutual relationship with the artist, maybe, you know, where you have, I don't know, an NFT, and you can also be in a private chat with them, or, you know, get more access to what they're doing, or there's just like a different way that creators can be empowered and also earn for it financially. And I think that's amazing for musicians, artists, creators, designers. And yeah, I can't wait to see where this is going. So we're coming to my last question now, Steph. Thank you so much for taking all this time. I'm wondering, could you leave maybe a couple last sentences with the audience, and maybe tell me what makes you the most excited, or what makes you smile in Web3 right now? Any of these, like what makes you smile when you wake up and you do your work, you know, like what do you really love about that? Yeah.
That is such a good question. I love that you're ending with what is the thing that makes me smile. The thing that makes me smile, I mean, for sure, the people. You know, I tweeted this like silly thing yesterday. I ate a Kit Kat that didn't have the wafer, that was like missing the wafer. So it was just like a like nugget of like, you know, not very nice chocolate. And I tweeted about it, and it was so funny to watch these people that like I follow, I'm just like peripherally friends with, pop in there and just like say the funniest, like condolences, just like, you know, and I just was like, oh yeah, that's right. That like we're all here because like we know that we're all here because we're trying to build this like next version of the web, of coordination, of creator economy, of decentralized finance. And at the end of the day, we are just like human beings, just like trying to find connection and like laugh with each other. And yeah, so that tweet really, the response just made me laugh so hard, and it just reminded me of how fun the space can be, and how, despite the real implications and oftentimes the gravity of the space, that sometimes it's like really important just to like not take yourself too seriously, and just to remember that like we all go to bed, we all wake up in the morning, we all can relate to like the potential utter distress of biting into a Kit Kat that's missing the wafer. But yeah, you know, at this, and I think the other thing that makes me smile is how many incredibly smart people are in the world and also in the space, that like I love that I am just learning something new from someone unexpected every single day. That like I know for sure that a previous version of me, if I met this person in real life, for whatever reason, they don't look like me, we don't share exactly the same political views, we come from different economic backgrounds, like whatever the difference is, that here in this space, I'm learning from them and they're learning from me. And that is the piece that feels really just full of possibility. You know, what would the world look like if we were able to find shared learning, bidirectional learning from just way more people than we currently do? I feel like the world would just be just a way more exciting place.
That's so beautiful. I think definitely diversity in this space really does it for me, because even like I get to represent, you know, a community. We're all representing somebody, you know, and we're inspiring somebody, because I'm also I have a mixed background, and sometimes I'm like trying to figure out where do I fit, you know, because it's kind of weird, but then it's just really nice for me to be playing this role, for you to be playing your role, and Joy as well. We're all here, we're all having these conversations, and we're inspiring each other, and there's so much diversity. And I think that makes the world a better place, you know, that we can all come together and share our cultures, our ideas, intelligence, and everything. And I think it's such a beautiful thing. And that's something I also appreciate so much about Web3. Like in our company, there's like, my background is in fashion, not in tech, but I'm working with all these like techie people, engineers, and all kinds of people, and picking their brains here and there. So it's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much, Steph. Thank you, Joy. This has been like a fabulous conversation. I really enjoyed every bit of it. And thank you all for being a part of NEWFORUM. If you want to get connected or get involved in our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. We will put all the links in the description. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to share as well. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. And we will also put our private Telegram group link in the description. Thank you all.
One last thing quickly, Steph, where can our audience find you on the social platforms?
I am primarily on Twitter. I'm at Crypto Honey, which is the word crypto and then HUN3Y. And yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to have this conversation. I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time. Yeah, let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all, and we will see you in the next episode.